Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Behind the Mind radio show on We Act Radio. We're powered by Ethical Electric. I hope everyone's having an amazing Friday to
Good morning.
start, and that we actually are, having some great weather wherever you are as well, too. How you doing, Anthony?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. So we are really excited to be able to, well, it's always good when guests can return as well to the show. And we are going to get a chance after we do the idea of the week and the did you know, Angela Luna, who is the founder and CEO of ADIFF, which we actually premiered her like right after she was graduating from school in 2016. And now we're in 2021 and the brand has expanded so much
Yes.
during that time. We're really excited to be able to do the growth journey with her, as we would say as well too. But before that, we do that. Let's do the idea of the week, Anthony.
Yeah. So the ideal of the week is timely because we have Angela on. It's really interesting. It's a brand called Your Body. Your Body designs undergarments for trans and non-binary people. Their core value is how these undergarments fit. So last March, Abrams and Graham launched Your Body, a clothing line with 7 staple garments for wardrobe. Lots of brand talk about fit, but Your Body thinks about fit specifically with the trans and non-binary community in mind. So, according to Abrams and Graham, in making inclusive styles required them to educate manufacturing partners on everything from inclusive terminology to fit. And ultimately, change the design process as we know it. Extensive research and development was took 2 years to take place. The founders interviewed people from trans and non-binary community and did market research and conducted surveys that informed each piece of the collection. So even developing relationships with manufacturers required them to define core understandings. One of the founders recalled walking into fittings and defining key concepts like gender identity, what it means to be transgender, and the importance of pronouns. So Your Body's launch collection shows how design details seem like a simple matter, but they're not. And how fit is more than just aesthetics. It's also important for mental health and identity. So prices for the line range from $40 to $88, and there's also a plan to launch 2 shirts unique with a new unique fit for Pride. So the brand is called Your Body, and it seems like they have a range of colors and sizes for people to choose from.
Really nice. So, is it launching in June for Pride Month?
No, they've already launched, but
Okay.
they're going to do 2 shirts for Pride.
Okay. All
Yeah.
righty. Okay.
So yeah,
Wonderful.
that was one of the new innovations that came out in undergarments. So
Nice. Nice. Okay. So now the did you know?
if you've been listening, we have been celebrating Asian Pacific American Heritage Month in May. So May is Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, a celebration of Asians and Pacific Islanders in the U.S. The month was chosen to commemorate the immigration of the first Japanese to the United States on May 7th, 1843, and to mark the anniversary of the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad on May 10th, 1869. The majority of the workers who laid the tracks were Chinese immigrants. So we take this month to recognize Asian Pacific American heritage folks. Our second one is something that you may or may not have known is Mental Health Month. May is Mental Health Month, and each year, millions of Americans face the reality of living with a mental health condition. Each year, they fight to support, stigma, and educate the public and advocate for equal care. Each year, the Each year, the movement grows stronger. And in 2013, President Obama proclaimed May as National Health Awareness Month. Mental Health Awareness Month, I'm sorry, and brought the issue of mental health to the forefront and to our nation's thoughts. It's important to address this year round, but highlighting issues during May provides time for people to come together and display the passion and strength of those working to improve the lives of tens of millions that are affected by mental illness.
Perfect. Yeah, I guess last week we talked a lot about mental health, and that's the tools and tips that she was offering everybody to,
Yes.
particularly in the pandemic, and she
Hmm.
was saying she wrote a book before the pandemic, but it was so relevant, when the pandemic actually hit, to actually offer people means of radical self-care,
Right.
is what she was talking about as well. So that's the Did You Know as American Pacific Islander, American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Um, in addition to mental health awareness, we talked last week about, I think you gave the National Sports and Exercise Month
Yep.
was as well in May.
Yep.
And
So there's a
then
lot of stuff going on in May.
yes, a lot of national. April has a lot. Sometimes you just don't, it's just so many,
Hmm.
sometimes,
Hmm.
and the days that go along with it as well, too. So that's our idea of the week and our Did You Know? And as we said before, as we came on air, we want to welcome back to the show Angela Luna. Welcome to the show.
Hi guys, thanks for having me again.
Welcome.
Absolutely. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I know it's been quite a year, and also it's been, I think, a little bit longer since that. I mean, since we last connected. So
Yeah, it's been three
happy to have you.
years. 3
Yeah,
years. It
yeah.
was
Oh my
2018.
gosh, I can't even believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so happy to reconnect and tell you guys what's been going on.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. And we were saying when we were off air that Angela's been on when we were just radio. So
Right.
it's the first time we actually see her face in person, beyond pictures, and get a chance to talk to her truly live, I guess you would say, in that way. So this is exciting as well, too. Yeah.
Wonderful. So since we've had you on, how have you expanded your brand?
Such a good question. So we actually have grown from just sort of being this direct to consumer sustainable fashion brand. We've evolved from just sort of making products and selling them with the buy one, give one donation model. We were making these jackets that turn into tents, which we actually still we're selling through the last of them now. We only have a handful left at our studio. But we've sort of transitioned from that to looking at longer term solutions for refugee and homeless communities. And we actually opened up a factory in Greece that employed resettled refugees. And there we were sort of piloting this new scalable upcycling system of how we can make fashion more sustainable and actually use waste materials to make garments instead of just fabric that we ordered from a textile mill somewhere in the world. So really kind of focusing more on sustainability as it relates to the ethics of that, and then also to the environment. So from that, going through the pandemic, I will say like our evolution has truly influenced our latest project, and the reason why we're here today.
Wow. So the materials of the brand have changed as well, too.
Completely. Yeah. So I mean, I will say when we were just making clothing and selling and donating it, we were sourcing responsible
Right.
materials. We were using recycled polyesters and nylons and organic cottons and things like that. But then when we finally had the control of opening our own factory, we could sort of rethink how systems were actually, or how clothing was actually made. So instead of having it be like you have to cut it from like a large sheet of fabric, we were like, okay, what if we could work with fabric scraps or different materials? So we actually managed to work with one of the nonprofits in Greece to collect all of these used United Nations tents that were going to be bulldozed and put to a landfill. We collected all those, deconstructed, cleaned them, and now we're turning those into new accessories. Same thing with like a lot of the life vests that were being put to landfills in Greece. We've been upcycling those, so that means like taking them apart and turning them into something new. So really kind of focusing on how we can use materials that are already made in the world and not try to make more things that are just going to end up in a landfill someday.
So what is that process like? of the
Yeah.
deep, because that really, when
It's
you say, I'm like,
new.
what is that like, to take things and break them down so that we could actually make something clothing wise with it?
It's a new process. And I will say, for a while, it's been very scary to everyone in the industry. And I should apologize too, because I feel like in the last few years, I've really kind of pigeonholed myself to this like academic aspect of talking about sustainable fashion. So no, I mean, it's basically taking a garment or taking something that has already been made and essentially cutting it up, taking out, whatever zippers or buttons or things that have been used to kind of hold it together, and then using those pieces that you have left as the raw material to make new things. So a lot of the times it's sort of like you're making like a patchwork sort of textile that can be recut into something new. But essentially, it's all about using as much of an existing material as possible to avoid it from going to a landfill or being destroyed.
Interesting.
Very, yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Yeah, you took the words. I'm like, that's very interesting.
That is-
To be, how timely is that? I mean, the
It does
amount of
take,
time.
it takes more time. So I will say, I mean, in this case, a lot of these materials, from like a business perspective, a lot of these materials are already going to be trashed anyway. So they technically don't have a value.
Okay.
So as a business, when we're working with brands or when we're making things for ourselves, we're not necessarily paying for those materials since they would be discarded. Where you kind of make up that cost is in the labor to take it apart. So it balances out like the cost of deconstructing a garment that's about to be trashed versus the cost of actually buying new textile. It evens out essentially. But I mean, I will say that's also a great opportunity for employment, since it can be relatively a quick thing if you kind of have a system in place. But there's so many people, especially now with the pandemic, who need job opportunities. And if there's a way to sort of streamline that deconstruction, we would be able to work with a lot of communities to help bring back jobs.
Nice. Yeah, I would say it sounds like it would create job opportunities for people to
Exactly.
learn that new process,
Yes.
and technique of not only deconstruction and then how it's used
Right.
in that way. And is this something that the fashion industry is starting to take on due to the pandemic, or was this something that was beginning before?
I will say, I think the idea has been there before, but I mean, honestly, the reason why we opened our own factory was because no factory wanted to take on this project. They had their
Okay.
existing systems in place. They knew how to do things a certain way. And so when I was approaching places, they're like, oh, it's too much work for us to even try to think about how we could integrate this to our system. But with the pandemic, a lot of factories have closed down or transitioned or taken on new opportunities. So we're having now, we're able to work with even domestic factories locally in New York City, of how we can bring this sort of concept to their facilities, where they're more open now to receive this sort of new approach to how to make things, because they've also been hit from the pandemic as well. So
Okay.
I will say it's sort of helped nudge along the innovation, and hopefully during this time we're able to sort of get a strong foothold in there and
Okay.
be able to have it be something for long term.
Okay. Good.
Right.
Good. Yeah.
Wow.
That's a shift.
It's crazy.
That
Hmm.
is.
Yeah.
Speaking of shifts from your fashion line, you have a book now. So what is the open source fashion cookbook?
Yeah, so I mean, it's very funny having a fashion brand, but also having a book, I will say. I mean, the whole idea for this project sort of came out from having time to reflect at the beginning of the pandemic last year. A lot of our projects got put on hold at the beginning of 2020. 2020 was supposed to be like the most amazing year. And then the pandemic hit, and it was like, oh, okay, we got to rethink things.
Mhm.
So we wanted to make a new collection, but we were very much influenced by a lot of the social justice movements that were happening domestically. And we're trying to sort of think of how fashion has played a role in all of these issues of discrimination, marginalized communities, all of that. So it was like, and also given the nature of the pandemic, almost everyone was out of work, ourselves included. So we were like, what's the point of making a new collection if no one can even really afford it if we produce it responsibly? Because, ethical labor comes at a higher price. And we also had the question about materials. We don't want to make clothing from, materials that were produced at a textile mill. We want to use the waste that people have and use what people have in their closets. So our question was like, how could we bring our new collection to people in a way that would, allow them to have the entire collection at little to no cost, in a way that would also allow them to use the materials they have in their closets. So in thinking of this project, I was sort of thinking back to what my teachers had said back in school of like, oh, if you're a good fashion designer, you're probably also a good cook. And looking at the similarities between the fashion industry and food, I was spending so much time cooking at the beginning of the pandemic, and I noticed like, oh, this is not only so much healthier for me, like I lost like 12 pounds at the beginning of COVID because I wasn't eating out. And it was, healthier for me, it was cheaper, it was better for the environment, all these things. And I was like, why can't fashion do that? Why is it so much easier to learn how to cook as opposed to learning how to sew and how to care for your garments? So kind of going down that idea, I was like, there should be a cookbook for fashion. So basically this new collection that we came up with, we wanted to have people be able to make it from things they have at their home. So that included like instructions on how to actually upcycle, how to take apart those garments, how to make a new textile from that and turn it into something new. And basically make it as user friendly as possible. So no one could have any questions about, what goes where. So decided to supplement that with a lot of step-by-step illustrations from, A to Z on how you can actually make a garment yourself and, bring it back to this sort of not relying on fashion brands to make things for you. So in the end, it turned out to be the open source fashion cookbook, which is basically taking all of our designs from our new collection. And then also we invited some other sustainable fashion brands to do this with us to release some of their, once proprietary designs. And, we made the recipes on how you can actually make it yourself at home. So all about sort of democratizing sustainable fashion and making sure everyone's able to participate.
Yeah, because that was one of the questions about how it was designed. Because I went through the book and looking at it, these essays, and then you also have these, patterns. And so I was, the question was it for the consumer to be able to grab the book and take it and do things themselves? So it was really designed for that. Was it, and how much
Exactly.
influence did you want it to have in the fashion industry as well, too, though?
I will say, I mean, it was totally for the consumer. In designing the book, I took a lot of inspiration from like the IKEA assembly instructions because,
Okay,
IKEA, it's such a great idea. You don't
it
need to be a
is.
carpenter to put together a piece of furniture. And the way that it's so easy is this, super simple illustrations. I mean, it's easy for me, but I know a lot of people who have a hard time putting together IKEA
Very
furniture.
true.
But still, it's making it a lot more accessible, a lot more easy for people to understand. So in the book, we wanted to provide a full 360-degree approach from, why this book needs to exist in the first place, with essays from academics, industry leaders, influencers, all in the sustainability space, as to, what the problem is in the world and why this sort of needs to be more of a thing. And then the actual recipes, the designs, that's sort of more of the solution in place of, okay, sustainable fashion is only catering to a specific audience who makes a certain amount of money and, fits a certain profile. And the solution is, hey, fashion brands should start to release their designs and offer more opportunities for everyone to participate. So yeah, I mean, it's mostly for the customer. And then on the side of the industry, I mean, we're putting some challenges in here. We're saying that customers really shouldn't have to rely on, this capitalistic model of the fashion industry. And,
Okay.
brands should be a little bit more open or transparent with, why they make things, how they make things, and how it's all put together. Fashion is so like cutthroat as it comes to like design, IP, and proprietary, and everyone's always copying everyone. And
Mhm.
so we're like, why don't we just release the whole thing anyway? Like it sort of flips this idea on the head of who the design is for and who it's really helping.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was reading. Your response in the Vogue article was
Yes.
about that as well too. And I was like, good for you, in that sense. But it also follows the model that you started to create, and how you wanted the brand to be. Again, it's
Exactly.
just the growth of the brand, extending it out. Because again, even with the jackets that turned into the tents, and the one for the child to sit in the back, it was all about accessibility. You wanted
Mhm.
the refugees to be able to have what they needed in order to get where they were going. So to me, it just makes perfect sense. The name sounds great, because when I saw Cookbook, I'm like, this is really interesting, because I don't think she's
Right.
getting into cooking, but I know.
Exactly. I know. I'm like, it's sort of when I start talking about the comparison of fashion to food, everyone sort of gets the name and they're
Yeah,
like,
very
oh,
true.
actually. But I mean, it's also super funny too, because in having a fashion brand, typically brands present in a lookbook. And when you type that on your phone, lookbook automatically corrects to cookbook, just like with autocorrect.
Oh,
And I'm like,
wow.
honestly, that's kind of funny how that happens. So it was going to be, the open source fashion lookbook. And I'm like, maybe it should just be a cookbook.
No, that's more catchy.
Yeah,
It is.
exactly.
It is. And it makes total sense. It
It
really
does.
does.
It does. Because again, it is for the end user, it's for the consumer to use. And
Yeah.
so that's something they would look for. We wouldn't look for a lookbook,
Yes,
because we wouldn't feel
exactly.
we're in the industry to use that particular term. So
Mhm.
Exactly. Although I will say, explaining it to my mom for the first time, when I was like, she's like, oh, what are you going to do during COVID? I'm like, well, I'm going to write a book and it's going to be a cookbook. And she's like, why are you making food? I'm like, I was trying to explain. She's like, I don't get it, but like, good luck. We'll see what happens. But now she gets it. Now she gets it.
Good,
Good.
good. But you touched on it a little bit. Given what does or more open, community driven fashion industry look like? You talked about it a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I feel like it's kind of like taking back the power of dressing yourselves. Um, like I think it looks a lot more how things used to be. Back in the day, like my mom used to have clothing that was made by my grandmother.
Right.
And you'd buy designer items or fashion pieces to supplement an existing closet that you've also kind of created yourself. So it wasn't
Right.
like your entire wardrobe was reliant upon fashion brands. You would go to Joanne Fabrics or Walmart even and get a pattern and
Correct.
learn to make things for yourself. So I feel like it's a little bit, it's a less reliance on brands to supply you with these things. And it's, yeah, taking back the ability to learn how to do things yourself and be a little bit more self-sufficient, which is, pretty challenging for brands. To really understand that. And when we were presenting this idea to the other companies that we invited to participate in the book, I expected like some backlash of, this is like, anti-fashion, so anti, the system there is. And it's like it's not really gonna help like the cause of selling new garments. But every single brand that I talked to was like fully supportive of this. They're like, honestly, we've been thinking about the same thing. Why are we even making more garments in the first place? So it was interesting to see the support from the industry for this exact idea. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a community that's a lot more open, a lot more
Yeah.
transparent, a lot more giving. Like, it's sort of this shared system of, if you have something in your closet, you share it with your friends, or you can resell it. If you're using things for longer, you're respecting them longer. You're still buying from brands, of course, but you're kind of taking back some of the power for yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a good part about it, together, because like you said, people aren't going to just stop buying from
Exactly.
brands. You know what I'm saying? And then brands that make transitions during the pandemic,
Yeah.
are offering some things to their consumers that are newer in the sense of how they do things.
Yeah, exactly. And I
I've
will say
s-
too, I mean, like even as it relates to the cooking aspect, the
uh-huh,
cookbook, just
uh-huh.
because you know how to cook doesn't mean you're going to stop going to restaurants. It means you have a
Correct,
greater appreciation for the food that
correct,
someone else prepares for you. And like,
correct.
I'm not gonna since I know how to make like pasta at home and it's super cheap, I'm not going to go to a restaurant and order like, a basic pasta dish because I know I can make that. But, you have a lot more respect for, quality meal, and why, what goes into it, and how much time it actually makes to make something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is the appreciation that develops, during that time. When you
Exactly.
make it yourself, there's
Hmm.
appreciation for it. And then I think in food, your taste buds do shift, your quality shifts. So I think with the same with this is once you do make it, then the quality of what you look for in the brands that you put your money behind and the clothes that you put on your bag, it starts to shift in that way. Yeah. Yeah.
And I will say too, I mean, I'm hoping like if there's one main takeaway, I'm hoping that customers can get from this is like, there's no reason that a shirt should ever cost $1. Like if you make a shirt for yourself and you see, I mean, yeah, oh, this takes some time. There's no way like in any way and whatsoever that anything should ever cost this much because of the material involved, the time it takes, the effort. So just sort of understanding a little bit more what's going on. I like to say like behind the seams of the garment.
Right, exactly. No, that's important as well too. So, one thing we talked about, or it really is involved in your work, it has been is sustainability as well too. But and I think the social justice has always been there. I mean, the work that you've been doing has always been social justice work as well too. But talk about the importance for those who don't know of making sure that when you talk about design, you talk about fashion, that some level of sustainability and social justice is involved.
Yeah, I mean, I will say so many people look at fashion as such a separate entity. Like in my time in school, and I believe I probably talked about this in the past with you guys, fashion sort of like this bubble of, perfection. It's something that you look to. It doesn't really come down too much into like the actual issues of the world, which actually could not be more untrue. I will say the number of people employed within the textile and fashion industry is huge. It's like one of the largest industries employing everyone across the world. So like to think that it's not that important, it doesn't actually have a role. I've heard so many times, well, fashion isn't necessarily saving lives, but there's so many lives involved in the process. So attention to sustainability, attention to social justice issues, attention to ethics, it's woven in with the industry itself. Just to say like fashion doesn't include those things, you're overlooking all of the people and sort of dehumanizing all the people along the way too. So, I mean, we've seen a lot lately. Like I like to say, sustainability is sort of like a marketing buzzword in the last few years. And there's been so many brands jumping on the bandwagon. And I think it's just like, and especially with social issues too, I think we all saw a lot of that this summer. But I think it really comes down to recognizing authentic impact from our, standpoint as customers of like, who's just saying this and who's actually backing it up with action. It's like, it's one thing to say you support, or you're donating to people who have suffered from the wildfires in California or Australia, when then you're producing your next collection in a unsustainable, environmentally harmful way that's actually contributing to the wildfires in general. Or, you stand with protesters, but then you're boarding up your stores in fear of riots and looting. So it's like, obviously none of these statements are, have any substance behind them. So it's important as customers to sort of analyze a little bit more just beyond an Instagram post and see what people are actually doing.
Yeah, it must have been Monday. Someone's doing, I don't know if it's a report that's getting ready to be published, but they went through all the companies that paid lip service to last year.
Oh, yeah.
And it's now less than 3% that actually acted on what they said. So they're getting ready to call them out.
Yeah,
the company's out.
That's good. I'm here for it. I'm here for the
I am too.
I'm here
all
for
day,
drama.
every day. So I'm ready for it to come out because people ride bandwagons. You know what I'm saying? They ride the wave, and when the wave slows down, like, whew, okay, cool, that's over.
Exactly.
And somebody was like, nope, not over.
All these issues are still a thing. The refugee crisis is still a thing too. I know. It's like it's insane to, I mean, it's like a lot of, what gets shared on social media and through the news cycles, but like, no, all these things are still very much prevalent issues. And I'm supportive of brands and companies, actually having connections to things, but it's one thing to just talk about it while it's a trend and another thing to actually stick with it, through the time. So,
so we'll see when that report comes out.
Yeah.
I think it's just when people ride those bandwagons, they're doing it for publicity.
Exactly. Yeah.
And to not get scrutinized. You know what I'm saying? For people that the groups that come after people to say, oh, you're doing, they're like, ooh, do that before they come after us. You know what I'm saying? And then another issue arises, and then people are able to just kind of, go underneath the covers, while another issue arrives. So yeah, it was less than 3%. So they're getting ready to do a report and release the companies that didn't hold true to what they said.
And I mean, and I will say too, I feel like it's the companies who talk the quietest about these issues that actually do the most.
Yeah.
And the ones who are like yelling from the mountaintops that actually, it's all just lip service. So it's an important thing to just sort of be aware of.
It is. Absolutely. Yep, for sure.
So you've talked about it once again, but what is a zero waste wardrobe?
Yeah, I would basically say it's using everything that you have, reusing it, and finding other ways to extend its life rather than, typically just donating it or throwing it away. I mean, that's not to say like, every single piece of your closet you're going to upcycle into something new, but basically exploring alternative ways of buying a piece and really being invested with that piece enough so that you're not just going to toss it at the end of the season. There's so many opportunities to recycle, and like the resale market of garments is huge. And even with the cookbook too, like we know we're talking about upcycling things, but we're being very specific about the items that we're encouraging people to upcycle. There's so many pieces that like, you should just bring it to a consignment store or try to keep it locally here. The one thing that I actually do find really important to shout out that most people don't know about is when you're donating clothes, it kind of seems like this zero waste solution of like, oh, I don't want to throw it away, I'm just going to donate it. But I feel like it's, what is it, like 97% of garment donations in like the Western countries end up being given through this pipeline to African nations and disrupting their local economies. So it's like you think that you're actually helping and things are going to someone locally, but most of the time it's like it's ending up somewhere else through I mean, this is like a whole other conversation. It's called waste colonialism. So like I learned about this, I think it was like 2 years ago. And since then I've been very intentional about like who I donate to, what that process is. But I would just say, yeah, zero waste wardrobes are really just sort of understanding all the pieces in your closet, not really adding to it unless you for sure know that you're going to get a lot of use out of a piece, and encouraging other opportunities to extend the life of that garment, whether it's through sharing with a friend or trading or consignment or upcycling in your own way.
Nice. And thank you for explaining it, because I was like, we can't assume people know what that is.
Oh yeah, no. I actually, we just put an infographic on our Instagram about it.
Oh, did you? Okay.
We had said something in the past. I think it was on Earth Day of like, oh, don't just donate your clothes like willy-nilly over here. So then someone was like, oh, why is that a problem? So then we kind of went in a little bit more detail in another infographic. But yeah, if anyone has questions, it's on our Instagram, as well as I wrote a post about it on our website blog when I first learned about it. I think it was 2019. So there's lots of resources.
Great. Yeah, exactly. But it also comes back to your education and how you move things through. You talk about systems, being part of what you do. That is part of a system, because again, you can just tell people, oh, don't donate your clothes. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Because they're like, oh, I thought I was doing good,
Exactly. Yeah.
And now you're saying I'm not doing good. Why? And it can make people, it could trip them up. That's just the best way.
And it's so confusing too. It's like, I mean, I wish that there were more resources to help people understand actually like these things. Because it's like, you shouldn't need a doctorate to be able to read a case study about these things. It should be, accessible and printed in an easy way. So I think like that educational component is like super important to highlight. And, again, that's why we're trying to do it in such a user-friendly way within our cookbook.
Yeah, absolutely. So perfect. So let's look at, well, that kind of piggybacks off of that, what we just talked about, really giving people a little bit of tips, or what would you do to try to be sustainable in your daily life? I mean, because it pulls back from the zero waste and your donation. So what tips do you offer someone, at least to start that process in some way?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the most sustainable thing that you have is something that's already in your closet. As it relates to the fashion industry, to lead a more sustainable lifestyle, it's not buying from sustainable fashion brands. It's using what you have and using it for longer, and not just getting rid of it at the end of the season. And that ties into other items as well, like single-use plastics in the kitchen. Just, if you get a takeout container, reusing that, like simple things like this. It just comes down to using things for longer, taking care of them, and having more value associated with these possessions.
Okay, that
Right.
makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And the better people can practice it, it's gonna help everybody,
Yeah,
and fashion's just one area of it, like you said as well too.
exactly.
Yeah, it's just one area.
Interesting. So we were talking about the pandemic before we started the show, but what with the effects of the pandemic, where is the fashion industry moving toward?
I mean, I will say, like, at the start of the pandemic, I feel like, I mean, there was like a lot of apprehension over what was going to happen, but then there were also so many resources for small businesses. And, our company, as well as so many other companies of, smaller business fashion founders that I'm friends with, they all, we've all been suffering from the long-term effects of the pandemic. Like we're suffering more this year than we were last year because there were so many
Yeah.
resources. Whereas now, it's sort of expected that things are going to return to normal, except they and haven't entirely. So I will say, like, a lot of the small businesses, like, we're hurting.
Mm,
So in terms of, supporting companies, I would really encourage everyone to shop small, shop local. And even with larger fashion brands too, I think that there is some more collaborations kind of coming back, like now that everyone sort of has a sense of what the next few months are looking like, or what the next year is looking like. Some of these external projects, larger companies are happening with the smaller ones, they're sort of coming back. But um, yeah, I mean, in general, as it relates to the industry as a whole, I'm curious to see if what everyone was, talking about the beginning of this year and last year are actually going to stick. I mean, I'm curious to see that 3% list come out of the
mhm.
companies that are actually upholding what they said they were going to do. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting shift, and we're working with other factors other than our own locally too, to work on upcycling and things like that. So it's kind of setting the framework for that, and I think that it's going to continue in that direction. It's trending in that direction, but at the end of the day, it's down to the customers, and it's down to all of us to give the power to these brands in the first place to hold them accountable. So I think that it can continue going in this direction, but it depends on all of us to make sure that happens.
Yeah, great point. Great point.
Very good points.
So let's go to our news and culture with Kelly Maven, and we'll come back with our conversation with Angela Luna. She is the CEO and founder of ADIFF. Kelly?
Hey everybody, this is Kelly Maven Media with your news and culture on Behind the Mind radio show. And Angela Luna is coming for my life, for fast fashion, for disposable items. Angela, listen, that's my stuff. We got to figure something out. And I want you to know that I do recycle water bottles, so if I can get some points there, that'd be great. So anyway, I want to talk about people putting you in boxes and trying to keep you there, when you want to live out your dreams and do different things. So I don't know if some of you, if I'm telling my age, I remember when Kobe Bryant and Shaq were rapping back in the day, before they put those albums out, people were like, stick to basketball. And they should have stuck to basketball because we heard the rap, so we knew they should have never did it, but we should have never told them not to. You should be able to expand, your talents and your interests and do the things that you want to do. And so most recently, J. Cole, we know has had much success as a rapper and hip hop artist, but he wanted to play in the Africa NBA equivalent, the Africa Professional Basketball League. And he made a team, Rwanda Patriots. And, people on the US side were like, no, don't do it, just rap. You're kind of old to get into the league at that age. But I'm always talking about normalizing blowing up beyond 40, in your 50s, or whatever you want to do at, beyond being a young age. And so he went out for the team, he made it. He just recently met his contractual obligations and he's off the team. But his teammates felt that he shouldn't be involved because he's wealthy and that was taking someone's job. And then you had other people saying, you're not a serious athlete, so you shouldn't play around with it. So all of those people, I say, mind your business. Mind your business, okay? Let this man go and do the things that he wants to do. It is not taking anything out of your mouth. And that's all I really have to say about that. I want to encourage anybody out there that wants to do something, go and do it, because I'm taking a hand dancing class this summer. And I might join a choir. I don't know why I want to join a choir so bad, but I want to put an album out. I just want to be in a choir, and I'm going to do that, no matter what anyone says. And speaking of choirs and singing and wonderful things, Broadway is back. They'll be turning those lights on in September. So, you start getting your tickets now, because it was already hard to get tickets for certain shows. And so it's probably going to be super difficult as we go back and the shows start opening again. I want to take my son to see Lion King, and I just realized I was, kind of dragging my feet about it, but as soon as I couldn't take him, of course, that desire to take him grew. And so I'm definitely going to check out some tickets and try to see if I can take him to see Lion King this fall. And finally, my road warriors. We know that personal travel is sort of coming back. People are, making plans and taking trips as we sort of open up from this pandemic. But now that Zoom has revealed that we can do a lot of things without going places, business travel is down so much, and we don't know if it's going to return. So there was this article recently in CBS News where they were talking about the average sales executive might travel 175 to 200 times per year, taking that many flights. And one of those interviewees in the article said that he went from that type of travel to 2 flights, and he literally got depressed, because it was his way of life. He's a people person. It changed just a lot of, about his life, and it affected him in that way. And so I'm going to say, that's how I got a lot of my free trips. That's how I went to Europe. That's how I went to Asia. Don't mess that up. Zoom, I'm just really mad that you revealed that this could happen. So to my small business owners, what are you going to do? Tweet us at Behind the Mind Radio Show, BTM Radio Show. Let us know. Will you start scaling back on your employees going on trips? Or do you feel that in-person meeting and exchange of energy is a different experience? I feel like you can do a lot on Zoom, but at least some initial meetings and things like that to build relationships have to happen in person. I have to be in the same room with people to really feel like, feel connected to them. So fingers crossed that we can get these free trips going. And that's your news and culture with Kelly Maven Media on the Behind the Mind Radio Show.
That was really good, Kelly. We're going to see.
Really, really good. Yes. But I'm totally with you, Kelly, where you have to have, even though we have Zoom and WebEx and all that stuff now, that human connection.
Yeah.
We have lost that completely.
Mm-hmm.
So
we're at a place where we're probably craving it even more because it was taken
correct
from us.
Correct. Yeah.
No, I want to go on the trips, people. So let's continue.
Me too.
You guys have a great weekend. I'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks a lot, Kelly. So let's continue our conversation as well. So let's look at, what are the long-term solutions you want your brand to work toward?
Such a great question. I feel like this past year, and actually the last 2 or 3 years, we've been really looking on this issue of waste and, what we're all throwing away, and the effects of that as it relates to so many social justice and ethical issues in the world. So what I am really most excited about is the opportunity to not only find solutions for this material, but also try to even correct some of the environmental harm that it's caused. So that's sort of like where my heart is. It's in the sustainability aspect, just because I've learned to see the connections or the ripple effects of, one small thing such as like throwing away a garment can have on issues such as climate change and the refugee crisis, and basically all these other causes that I very much care about. So like going to the actual source of how we can put a pin in it and try to fix something so that way the ripple effects don't even happen is really sort of what my attention is and what I'm most excited about working on with our brand, and then also in collaboration with larger brands as well.
So, one thing I want to go back to the cookbook really quick, so people know, if you haven't seen it, you can purchase it through your website, or how are people able to purchase the book?
Yeah, so it's on our website just as the open source fashion cookbook. It has its own little drop down window as well. So it's pretty easy to find. And it's also available on Amazon. I will say we do have a transparent pricing page at the beginning of the book, just so everyone knows, because it's a $60 book, which I know is expensive for a lot of people, but we did self-publish this book, and in doing that with Amazon, they take quite the cut. So that is shown on our website with that first page. And we do get slightly more of the sales if it's purchased through our website versus with Amazon. So I would encourage everyone, if you can purchase it through our website, please do so. Otherwise, totally understand if you choose to do so with Amazon. And we also have an ebook on the Amazon account as well. But I will say too, if you're interested in learning more about the book, you're not really sure if you want to commit to that just yet, I would encourage you guys to follow us on social media, either on Instagram or on TikTok, because we're turning some of the recipes written in the book into actual videos. So you can get kind of a taste and see if you're able to make it, if you actually like it, and then sort of make your commitment from there. But yeah, really just trying to provide everyone with an option to participate in any way they can.
Yeah, so if you see there is a page within the book, it has transparency and the costs. Again, this is being a systems person. It's broken down of everywhere that the money is going.
Exactly. And we're sharing, I should say too, I mean, designs are a very proprietary thing. And, you know, that's what the fashion industry has been so concerned about, is if someone knocks you off, then they're getting the money for the exact thing that you designed. So we thought it only fair to share the revenue or the sales with the other designers who are included in the book. So, you know, that's factoring into the cost too. But, you know, we're all about transparency, and we want everyone to know where their dollars are going. And we think everyone should be entitled to understanding that. So that's why we really wanted to break it down for everyone.
No, it's a great idea. But what I say to
Good
people is
idea.
then you go to the website and buy it from you.
Yes.
Don't buy it from Amazon, because the transparency and the breakdown, if you're clear on where your money is going, then you don't buy it on Amazon.
Exactly. I know. I'm like, when I put that page in, I was like, I wonder if Amazon's going to come for me with that, with putting that in there of how much money they're
Amazon,
actually making.
they don't care. They just want to make sure you got it on there. They
Right.
don't care.
Exactly.
But we want you people to go to your page, because again, other people who contributed, and it's a lot of people that contributed to this.
Exactly.
Also get some profit, you know, off of it as well. So really, people go to the site and purchase it off the site, and get it from the site.
Yes. And the site's ADIFF.com for everyone.
Exactly. ADIFF.com.
Yes,
That's where you
please.
buy the book. We're not pushing the Amazon purchase.
You're not. Yeah.
We are not.
I mean, I feel like I personally work for Jeff Bezos right now, and then like whatever money that I get from selling the book, I end up spending back on Amazon.
Right,
So
exactly.
it's a
Yeah. So
cycle.
no,
It's
let's
really
keep the
unfortunate.
money in-house. Let's circulate all the dollars within this small
Yes.
business here. Yes.
Exactly. Because people really don't realize how much profit Amazon makes,
Yeah.
and how much the originator actually gets.
Correct.
Exactly.
So it's
Correct.
really good that you put that transparency page on there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks,
exactly.
guys.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. No. Amazon got a lot of money.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. So
They don't need no more.
Exactly. So
So-
looking at all the projects you have designed, which one do you think reflects your personality the most, Angela?
Honestly, I would say it's this book. I believe in the author's note I mentioned this, or maybe I've just been talking about it to people, but you know, I started my business based on my thesis at Parsons. And to me, it's been 4 years, or when I started this project, it was 4 years from when I had graduated. And this is really like my second thesis. It's sort of taking that original idea of how fashion can do more, how fashion can respond to global and social issues of our world, and actually put solutions into practice. That was my goal, and I feel like this book fully encompasses that in a way that the first project just sort of touched upon. So for right now, I'm going to say this project, but then I'm sure in 4 years I'm going to have another one that's going to be even more so. But it's all a journey of growth.
Wonderful.
Nice.
Yeah, because just the whole idea of fashion having the intersection of food and fashion is something that's really I would have never thought about until you break it down like you said before, and it makes complete sense. So
Yeah.
I know. And it's so funny too, because I'm like, now I'm starting to do that with other industries beyond just food. I'm like,
Okay.
it's all the same. Everything's the same.
Yeah.
And so what works in one area might work in another. So it's just an interesting way to look at it from a different perspective.
Yeah. And it's also part of being a designer.
Exactly.
Having that
Yes.
design mind, that you kind of connect into the collaboration between things and how things
Totally.
actually work together, and certain things are always in common,
Mhm.
in that way as a designer too. So we have two behind the mind questions for you because you've been on 2 times already. So we got some new ones for you.
Okay. Sounds good.
At least one is new. Let's say it, because the other one is always changing. So do you have one object that you would not trade for anything in the world?
I was thinking about this question, and literally the answer just popped into my head right this exact second, which would be my Bernina sewing machine. So when I first got to college, I had grown up on this old school Singer sewing machine that my mom bought for me when I was like, I don't even know, 8 or 9 years old, when I was first learning how to sew. And then, of course, when I was 18 and going to school, that one did not work anymore. So I upgraded to one that was a little bit more high tech. And I've had that machine since, the first day of school. And I say I guard it with my life. I've flown overseas a few times with that machine, and I've been like, oh, but if the plane crashes, I'm going to lose the machine. Like, not about my life at all, though. I'm concerned about the brain. So that machine's my baby, and everything actually that you see in the cookbook, all those garments, I did sew those on that exact machine. So
Nice.
yeah, it's very near and dear to my heart.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. So this is one that we always ask our guests, a motto or a affirmation that you live by, Angela.
Yeah. So I will say this actually relates to our latest project. In trying to convince other designers who I see as so much more established and far along in their careers than me, I was like, it's so crazy that I'm trying to have a seat at the table with these big league players. And, I'm someone who sort of struggles with this imposter syndrome constantly of just being, female entrepreneur, female founder, making sure that I actually have, I can back up what I'm saying. But I was like, how do I even have a seat at the table for these conversations to be a leader in this industry? And when I started thinking about this book, I was like, I know how you do it. You plan the party, you plan the dinner party to get the seat at the table. So
There you go. Great point.
that's kind of been something that I've been really, I have it actually literally in my notebook. I always kind of keep it at the front just in case. So it's something I can, remind myself, like, it's totally possible to have a seat at the table if you're planning the party. So
that's a great point.
That is a very good one. Yeah.
Yes, that's a great point. There you go. There you eliminate everything else.
Exactly.
You're putting yourself at the table, and
that's right. Exactly.
those
and shaping the table. You shape
Exactly.
it. Yeah, with anybody else who comes along, So
yeah, I put the place cards out. I
that's
figured out
right.
where everyone was
You invite
sitting,
the people,
and everyone had a great time. I'll say that too. So
exactly. And then you get to say what you want to say.
Exactly.
So one last question before we close out is looking at the intersection of design and innovation and manufacturing and its effect on cities, because you have the place in Greece, and I know you're trying to do things, you're doing things locally as well. So what effect does it have on cities? Because manufacturing has shifted a lot, but with this intersection of the three, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I will say, I feel like cities were founded based on manufacturing. So, like when you look at the garment district in New York City and, all these areas that really became what they are because of this idea of manufacturing. And especially with the pandemic of things sort of closing down. I mean, I feel like doing things locally is so important. And it's one of our goals for whatever collaborations, whatever projects we have to really contribute to the local economy. So as it relates to Greece, we're using materials from that area. We wanted to employ people from that area, but then also in the US too, we're working with larger brands who have their warehouses domestically, and it doesn't necessarily make sense environmentally or ethically to send it all the way to Europe and back. So we're really looking at revitalizing the local economy, the urban environments that surround, where the materials are. And it's funny because I feel like, design and innovation definitely relate to that, but this is also an older idea of keeping things local, keeping things close to home. So I'm interested to see like where it goes. I think the pandemic has had a huge effect on that because we have been limited to travel. We haven't been able to go outside of our cities or even our states. So there's been a lot more engagement locally, especially in New York. But yeah, I think that really where the investment should go is to the local economy, to local manufacturing, to local communities here, and how we can make sure that we can all get through this.
Perfect ending to the show.
Thank you.
Oh God, this has been great. We really appreciate you coming back. And you're always welcome to come back. Always.
All right, the next big project, I'll be here.
Yeah, the next big one. Yeah, because I think we kind of go with everything that's in your next thing, which is that's a great part.
Very at home on your show. So I appreciate you guys.
I appreciate that. Absolutely. So we're gonna have you close the show with your drop.
Okay, this is Angela Luna of ADIFF, and you are listening to the Behind the Mind radio show on We Act Radio.
Wonderful. You all have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.
See you next week. Thank you.
Bye-bye.